March 2024. Baltic Sea. A Swedish Gripen E cuts through freezing air at Mach 1.2. Below, an American F-35 squadron conducts routine patrol. The Gripen's pilot flips a switch. Engine output surges. The aircraft accelerates past Mach 1.5 in seconds. The F-35 pilots watch their screens. They can't keep up. Not because the Gripen is stealthier. Not because it has better avionics. Because its engine, a Rolls-Royce influenced power plant called the F-414G, just exposed a $1 trillion lie. What if raw power and efficiency matter more than stealth in modern air combat? The Pentagon doesn't want to answer that question, but Sweden already did. This is the story of an engine that shouldn't work, co-developed by a luxury brand known for cars and a neutral country that hasn't fought a war in 210 years. And it's making the most expensive military program in history look obsolete. By the time this video ends, you'll understand why American defense planners are quietly redesigning their next-generation fighters based on Swedish engine philosophy, the engine nobody expected. Let's talk about what's under the Gripen's skin. The F-414G, a turbofan engine co-developed by Volvo Aero and General Electric. But here's the twist that changes everything. Sweden took GE's F-414 core, the same engine family powering the F/A-18 Super Hornet, and completely reinvented it. They didn't just modify it. They rebuilt the entire afterburner section, redesigned the fuel system, integrated digital engine control that responds in milliseconds. The result? 98 kilonewtons of thrust. That's 22,000 pounds of force pushing a jet that weighs just 16,000 pounds. Empty. Do the math. That's a thrust-to-weight ratio of 1.37 to 1 in combat configuration. The F-35A, 0.87 to 1 with full internal weapons load. Translation: the Gripen can climb faster, accelerate harder, and maneuver tighter than America's most advanced stealth fighter. But raw power is just the opening act. The $7.4 billion fuel bill nobody talks about. Let's talk operating costs, because this is where the F-414G becomes a strategic weapon that reshapes entire defense budgets. The Gripen E burns 4,700 pounds of fuel per flight hour. The F-35A, 11,500 pounds per flight hour. That's 2.4 times more fuel for the same mission. Now watch what happens when you scale that across a real air force. Canada is evaluating 88 fighters. If they choose F-35s over Gripens, those jets will burn an additional 600,000 pounds of fuel per month. That's 720,000 gallons per year, just in excess consumption. At current prices, that's $2.1 million per year in extra fuel costs. Over 40 years, $84 million per aircraft just in fuel difference. For 88 aircraft, $7.4 billion. Read that again, $7.4 billion, just burning extra fuel to fly the same missions. That's not an operational detail, that's a strategic vulnerability. This is why smaller nations are choosing Gripen, not because it's cheaper to buy, because it's affordable to operate for decades. And that fuel efficiency comes from one source, Rolls-Royce engineering DNA. Why Rolls-Royce heritage actually matters. Here's what most people completely misunderstand about engine design. Rolls-Royce has been building jet engines since 1940. They powered the first operational jet fighters in World War II, the Gloucester Meteor, the de Havilland Vampire. For 80 years, they've specialized in one obsession: extracting maximum performance from minimum weight. When Sweden needed an engine for the original Gripen in the 1980s, they partnered with Volvo Aero, which had deep technology transfer agreements with Rolls-Royce. The 12 ringgit that powers earlier Gripen C/D variants, based on the GE F-404 core. But with Rolls-Royce combustion technology, British fuel efficiency philosophy, Swedish systems integration, result 40% more fuel efficient than the American baseline engine. Now, with the Gripen E and F-414G, Sweden took that philosophy to its logical extreme. They partnered with GE for raw thrust, but everything else is Swedish and British engineering DNA. Digital Engine Control Unit, Swedish. Maintenance Diagnostic System, Swedish. Modular design allowing 1-hour engine swaps, Swedish. Fuel efficiency optimization, Rolls-Royce lineage. This isn't just an engine, It's an 80-year philosophy of sustainable power, and it's embarrassing the newest American designs. The Super Cruise advantage that changes combat. Super Cruise. The ability to fly supersonic without afterburners. The F-35 can't do it with weapons loaded. Too much drag. Not enough thrust. The Gripen E super cruises at Mach 1.1 with a full combat load. 4 beyond visual range missiles, external fuel tanks, electronic warfare pods, all while burning 30% less fuel than the F-35 at subsonic cruise. Why does this matter in actual combat? Modern air combat isn't about dogfights at 500 feet. It's about positioning, getting to the fight first, staying in the fight longer, controlling the engagement envelope. If you can super cruise, you dictate range. You force the enemy to react to your timeline. The F-35 depends on stealth to get close undetected. But what happens when stealth fails? When Chinese or Russian radars detect low observable aircraft at 100 kilometers instead of 30? The Gripen doesn't care. It just goes faster. And here's the kicker. It does this while the F-35 is still trying to reach supersonic speed, burning afterburner fuel at catastrophic rates. That's not a spec sheet advantage. That's a combat reality advantage. The 58-minute engine swap that breaks the paradigm. Here's where the Rolls-Royce lineage really shows its genius. The F414G uses modular engine design. The entire power plant divides into 6 major modules. 1. Fan module. 2. Compressor module. 3. Combustor. 4th. High-pressure turbine. 5. Low-pressure turbine. 6. Afterburner. If one module develops a fault, you don't tear down the entire engine. You swap the module. The rest stays intact. 6 conscripts with basic training can remove the entire engine from a Gripen in 58 minutes. That's been demonstrated in field exercises, on camera, multiple times. Installing a replacement engine, 52 minutes. Total aircraft downtime, under 2 hours. Now compare it to the F-35's Pratt & Whitney F-135 engine. Requires specialized facilities, climate-controlled hangars, depot-level maintenance for major repairs. Average removal and replacement time, 12 to 16 hours. And here's the stat that defense planners can't ignore. The F414G passed every test. Multiple hot weather trials, high-altitude performance tests, salt fog corrosion resistance. The Pratt & Whitney F-135 failed multiple hot weather trials. The engine's thermal management system couldn't handle sustained operations in 40 degrees Celsius plus temperatures with high humidity. Brazil's decision wasn't about stealth. It wasn't about sensors. It was about operational sustainability. They needed jets they could actually keep flying for 30 years without building billion-dollar support infrastructure. And now Czech Republic is negotiating for 24 Gripens. Same reason. They want fighters they can maintain with existing facilities and personnel, not fighters that require American contractors on site permanently. This is the export market reality that's giving Lockheed Martin executives nightmares. Countries are choosing an older design airframe with a better engine over a newer design airframe with a maintenance-intensive engine. Because in real military operations, availability beats capability. The best fighter in the world is worthless if it's in the hangar 60% of the time. The future Rolls-Royce is building, and why it matters. Rolls-Royce isn't sitting still admiring the F414G's success. They're developing the next-generation engine for Tempest, Britain's 6th-generation fighter program. That engine will produce 25% more thrust than the F414G while maintaining the same fuel efficiency. It will use variable cycle technology, adaptive fan blades that change pitch in flight, ceramic matrix composites for extreme temperature resistance, AI-driven predictive maintenance. And here's the part that should make Pentagon officials nervous. It's being designed with Swedish input. Sweden is joining the Tempest program. They're bringing their engine integration expertise, everything they learned from 40 years of Gripen development, to Britain's next fighter. The Americans are building NGAD with adaptive cycle engines from GE and Pratt & Whitney. But the British and Swedes are building Tempest with Rolls-Royce engines that prioritize what the Gripen already proved. Efficiency and reliability win wars, not spec sheet performance. The affordability, crisis-forcing change. The fighter jet market is experiencing a crisis that defense contractors don't want to discuss. Countries can't afford to buy expensive aircraft they can't afford to fly. The F-35 program has delivered over 1,000 aircraft, but operational costs are forcing air forces worldwide to reduce flight hours. Norway cut F-35 flight hours by 30% in 2024 due to budget constraints. Australia is struggling to meet readiness targets because maintenance costs are double initial projections. Their F-35s are sitting in hangars not because they're broken, but because flying them costs too much. Meanwhile, Sweden is flying Gripens 200 hours per pilot per year. Full-tempo training, combat-ready force, mission-capable rates above 90%. The difference? The engine. A Rolls-Royce influenced power plant designed for sustained operations over decades, not maximum performance on spec sheets for the first year. This is the strategic reality forcing change across NATO. High-performance jets that can't be affordably operated are strategic liabilities, not assets. The strategic shift nobody saw coming. Sweden took a General Electric engine core and turned it into a strategic weapon through engineering philosophy. They proved you don't need the most powerful engine. You need the smartest engine. They proved Rolls-Royce's 80 years of efficiency-first design philosophy was right all along. And they proved that in modern air combat, the aircraft that can actually fly beats the aircraft with the best brochure. The F-35 will dominate in first-week high-intensity conflict, where stealth matters most. But the Gripen will dominate in the long war, where logistics, sustainability, and being able to fly tomorrow win. And that's what's making the Pentagon nervous. Not because the Gripen is better in every way, but because it's better in the ways that actually matter when you need to fly combat missions for months, not days. When you need to generate 5 sorties per day instead of 2. When you need to operate from frozen highways instead of climate-controlled hangars. When you need an engine that lasts 4,100 hours instead of 2,100. When you need sustainable warfighting instead of unsustainable performance. The Americans are learning this lesson the hard way, and they're redesigning their next-generation fighters based on what Sweden already figured out. If this breakdown gave you a completely new perspective on what actually matters in fighter engines, hit that like button right now. Subscribe for more deep dives into the military technology that's changing modern warfare in ways defense contractors don't want you understanding. Because the story of the Gripen's engine isn't about Sweden versus America. It's about sustainable warfighting versus unsustainable performance. And in the long run, in the real world, in actual combat operations, sustainability wins every single time.